Welcome, folks. The Torah portion, Chumash Rashi, Parshas Emor. We continue. Second reading. A second reading in Vayikra, Leviticus, chapter 21, verse 16. We continue. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemar, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Daber al Aaron. So yesterday we spoke about Moshe speaking to Aaron and his sons and descendants that are Kohanim, the priests, and who they can become impure for when they pass away, who they can't become, and different laws that are that concern the Kohanim, who are a notch above, and that they are there to serve God in the sanctuary. That's their duty. Okay, so Daber el Aaron. So speak to Aaron. Lemor, saying, Ish mizaracha, a man from your seed, your offspring, throughout the generations, that will have a mum. A mum means a defect, right? They have some kind of defect. It's even a bodily defect. It doesn't mean a spiritual defect, right? Lo yikrav lahakriv lechem elokav. Shall not offer God's food, right? The offerings on the altar are considered God's food. They're nourishing to the heavens, to the divine. Rashi, lechem elokav, maichal elokav, God's food. Kol seuda kruya lechem. Every meal is termed, any kind of meal, Suda means a meal, right, is termed lechem, bread. Kamoi, avad lechem rab. He made a great feast. So bread, called breaking bread, right? Is that what you make a feast with. Ki called isha yesh for any man who has a mum, a defect, la yikrav, he shall not approach, shall not come close. In other words, in the divine service, ish iver, a blind person, ipiseach, or a lame person, bechorum, or chorum means nose is sunken, or sarua, or mismatched limbs. Right now, that might be a birth defect, and you say, "Well, it's his fault?" It's got nothing to do with his fault. There's not a blame game over here, right? It's just there are certain physical things that are called a defect, and a defect to serve as a kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. It's not a defect. It's not a defect that you are a defected person. It's just a defect in that service. Just like I have a defect that I can't serve I can't serve as a kohen because I'm only a Levi. Right? Do I look at it as a defect of me? No, it just means that's not my place. So the same idea is over here. Okay, verse 18. Ki kol ish asher yesh by mum lo yikrab. For any man who has a blemish shall not approach. It's not proper that he should approach. Like the verse says, go offer it to your ruler. Okay, a verse, I'm not certain the context here. Charum, so charum, that disfigured, that a nose is sunken, between the two eyes, like sunken in, and it looks deformed. That's the idea, is it looks deformed. That he applies color to his eyes at once, an unbroken movement, since the bandage of the nose does not stand in the way. Sarua, one is an enlarged she'echa me'ivarav, that one of his external parts of his body that come in pairs is enlarged. Gadol mechaver is larger than the other. For example, eina yachas gdela, one eye is large, ve'eina achas ketana, and one is small. Vaysheke achas, or one of his legs, aruka mechaverta, is longer than the other. Right. So in such an instance, that's considered a physical defect that disqualifies them from doing the divine service.
My father said he couldn't do the dishes because he has one arm longer than the other. I can't serve. There's one arm longer than the other. I will show it. One arm's longer than the other.
What's a good one?
One arm's longer. I can do it. One arm is longer.
1 second. And your mother let him get away with that? Or she just smiled and moved on. Number
You
19.
didn't have any choice. You had to laugh it off.
Or a man who has a broken leg, or shever yod, or a broken arm, right? The other ones, it seems to me, the other ones are like permanent. These are not permanent. And, after the broken arm is fixed, you could then, in fact, there's a booklet over Shimalay, there's a booklet for you there. What page is it?
It's okay, I'll use my phone.
Oh, okay, fine, okay.
It has color.
Or giben, or dak, or someone who has long eyebrows, that they, or a cataract. Lul be'enai, or garav, or mingling in his eye, or yalefis, or dry lesion, or meroyach oshech, or a crushed testicle. Rashi, very graphic over here. A gibain is an unusual eyebrow. In Old French, sourcils. Shegivine einav sa'arav aruch, that the hair of the eyebrows is unusually long, v'shechev, and it droops in an unusual way. That they're so long that they droop over his eyes. Oidak, or he has a cataract. Sheyesh le be'einav daik. He has a film on his eyes, shekairin, and that they call it in Old French, ta'il. Taylor. Kamai hanaite badaik. Similar to that he spreads out in the heavens like a film. Valul, or a mixing. Davra mavalvils ha'ayin, things that mix the colors of the eyes. Kigoim chut lavan, like a white strip. Hanimshach min alavan, that extends from the white of the eye. Upaisik basira, and it cuts into the iris. Shuhu Eigo, which is the circle. Hamukaf is a shachar that surrounds the black part of the eye, the pupil. Shikairin, that it's called prunelle in Old French. Vachut hazen, this strip, Paisik is a Eigo, cuts the circle, v'nichnas v'shachar, and enters into the black. Targum Bolul Chilis. And Onkelos translates it into Aramaic, chilis, lashon chilozain, type of sea creature. Shuhu daim leteilas isa achud, because the strip is similar in its shape to a worm, as is a chilozain. V'chein kenuhu chachmei Israel. Likewise, the sages of Israel, they named it so as the Onkelos did. B'mumei ha'bechor, as a blemish of the firstborn. Chiloz and nachash eineb. Chiloz is known as the snake, the grape. Okay. Garaf oyalefis mini shchin hein. These are type of boils. Right? Garav zu cheres. This garav is known as chiris or cheres. Rather, shchin hayavash shebifnim b'chutz. It's a boil that's dry on the inside and the outside. The aleph is he, and the aleph is a chazozis mitris, an Egyptian rash. V'laman nikrasi alephis. Why is it called the alephis? Shemelapefes b'haileches, because pergolesa becomes more closed to the closely bound to the sufferer ad yom hamisa, until the day of his death. Vihi lachmi b'chutz. It's moist on the outside, and yavish b'bifnim, and dry on the inside. The other one was dry on both sides. Elsewhere, keri gara. It's the term garaf l'shchina lachatz mibachutz is a boil that's moist on the outside, v'yavish b'bifnim, and dry on the inside. The opposite, right? That was the yalefis. In other places, they switched the understanding of those two words. And gerev and acheres can be explained as follows: samach garev eitzel cheres. And when the Torah juxtaposes a garev and acheres, keren yalef is gerev. They call it yalef is moist on the outside and dry on the inside. Garav, they call it a garav. But when the garav is juxtaposed to yalef is garav. The scripture calls a cheriv. Torah calls the cheres a garav. So it depends what's next to what, and then what its explanation will be. Okay, miruach ashech, a crushed testicle. Lefi atargum meris pachdir. Shepachdim merusosin. The testicles are crushed. Beitim shaloi kesusin. That they're squashed. Pachta and pachta kamoi. Pachta gidi pachta is roigu. Okay. 21. Kol isha boy mum. So now any person, any man who has a mum, this defect that we're talking about, mizer Aaron, that comes from the seed of Aaron, the offspring of Aaron, a kohen, lo yigash lahakriv, he should not come close to bring an offering. As he Hashem, the fire of God, mum boy, he has a blemish in him. As lechem elokav, lo yigash lahakriv, the bread of God, of his God, he should not come close to bring an offering. Now, this seems to be repetitive because we mentioned that earlier, right? Why is this repeated? Let's see Rashi. Kol ish asher yesh bo mum, any person who has a blemish, la rabba shar mumim. This, so Rashi says, why is this being repeated? Because there are the Torah specified certain ones, but Rashi is saying that this is coming now to tell us, right, that it's including other ones that were not mentioned. Mumbai, what does it mean that he has a blemish? It's also repeated. Boy puzzle. The blemish is still on him. That's what disqualifies him. But if the blemish passed on, kosher, he's fit to perform the service. In other words, if he had a broken arm, we spoke about a broken arm, right? So the broken arm is fixed. He can then go serve in the Beis Hamikdash, right?
Not while his arm is broken.
Not while his arm is broken, exactly.
Because that becomes a defect.
That's a defect, exactly. Lechem elokav, the bread of God. Kol meichel, all food, kriya lechem, is called bread. In other words, any type of offering, right, is called bread of God. Lechem elokav mikadshe hakodshim or mikadshim yechel. His God's food from the most holy and from the holy ones he may eat. Oh, okay. So what does that mean? So he's invalid to do the service, but this verse is saying, right, that he can eat from it. Mikache, let's see Rashi 22. Mikache hakochim, from the holy of holies, these are the higher level degrees of holiness. Like a chatos, right, is the higher level of holiness. Higher level of holiness means it has to be slaughtered in the courtyard, not in the courtyard on the northern side, not just anywhere. For example, Mina kochim yechal, from the holy he may eat. Ela kochim kalim. This refers to the lesser degree of holy, right? In other words, the first part of the verse says the higher degree of holiness. The lesser degree of holiness is a korban shlomim, a peace offering. A peace offering can be slaughtered anywhere. It doesn't have to be slaughtered only in the northern side of the sanctuary. For example,
This is only for
the kohen. We're talking about the kohen now, but we're talking about the kohen that is blemished, that's got a defect, right? Im nemer b'kochim kalim, kochim. No, it's not talking about us, right? So if the verse said the higher degree of holiness that it's permitted, lama nemer b'kochim kalim. Why do I have to say about the lesser degree? Obviously, those are also included. The higher degree I could eat from them, the kohen could eat from them, then all the more so from the lesser degree of holiness. Why does it say it then? Rashi asked, right? We would have reasoned it. So Rashi says, no. If it wouldn't have stated, I would have said, that a kohen, remember we're talking about a kohen that has a defect. He's not allowed to serve, but he could eat the meat that the kohen would eat, right? He could eat the meat, where the Israelite couldn't eat the meat because it's only for Kohanim. He could eat the meat, right? So I might think that when it comes to the higher level of degree of holiness, that only that the kohen could eat. Why because we found a precedent that it's permitted for a non-kohen to eat from the higher degree of offerings, higher degree of holiness. Because Moshe, who was not a kohen, he ate the meat of the breast at the inaugural offerings. But the breast and the leg of the kohen's portion, shel koshim kalim, was a lesser degree of holiness. A blemished kohen may not eat from it. Because we don't find any time that a non-kohen would eat from that portion. That's why it says also the lesser degree of holiness. So it's explained in the tractate Zvachim. Is that clear what we just said? Others, we see that Moshe in the inauguration, who was not a kohen, he ate from the higher degree of. So maybe only the higher degree because there's a precedent to it. There's no precedent for the lower degree of offerings that a non-kohen would eat from it. So therefore, we would know it. That's why the verse has to say also the lesser degree that a kohen who is blemished, who has a defect, can eat from the meat. He didn't lose the fact that he's a kohen. The only thing that he lost, perhaps temporarily, if it was only a temporary defect, is doing the actual service. Okay? However, but to the pareches, which is a dividing curtain, he shall not come. Yigash, and to the altar he shall not draw close. Why? Because he has a defect. And he should not desecrate. Yechala means desecrate, make mundane, right, or desecrate. My sanctuary, my holy things, ki ani Hashem mikacham, because I am Hashem who sanctifies them. Right. In other words, God's the one who decided who's sanctified, who's not sanctified, right? Rashi 23, but shall not come to the pareches, the dividing curtain. Where's the dividing curtain? Where is it? Where is it?
Inside the mission.
Huh? It's inside the Holy of Holies.
Before.
It's separating between the holies and the Holy of Holies. At what unit mark? 20 amas in, with leaving 10 amas for the Holy of Holies. As the Holy of Holies was 10 by 10. Well, how much is an amma? This is an amma, a handbreadth, about a foot and a half,
Handbreadth,
a handbreadth.
no, not a handbreadth, arm length.
Arm,
Arm length.
An arm length?
Not a foot, handbreadth is this,
a hand,
this is a handbreadth. Six-
right, that's a, right.
Six,
Four.
Handbreadth is this?
four, yeah.
Yeah, this is a handbreadth, this is an arm length, right, arm length.
But whose?
Four.
Okay, that's
Four.
that's a discussion in the Talmud.
He has a big arm length.
That's a discussion in the Talmud. Okay,
Good, good.
okay, 23.
Where's the Gemara?
So, ach ela pareches, but to the pareches, to the dividing curtain, lahaze sheva hazois, to sprinkle 7 sprinklings of blood, shala pareches, that go sprinkle on the pareches, right, which is part of the sacrificial procedure that the sin offering of the Kohen Gadol that we learned about last week's parsha, and the sin offering that's brought on behalf of the entire nation, right? So on. The bull and his he-goat is on Yom Kippur. So that he can't do, right? Ela Mizbeach, to approach the Mizbeach, the altar, Achitzain, the outer altar. Ushneim, and both of them, both statements, the one about the altar and about the pareches, if it's necessary to write. As is explained in Torah's Kanim. Because you might think, well, if you can't even go to the altar, the outer altar, obviously you can't go inside the sanctuary. So in the Talmud, it explains there why you need both statements to be said. Lo yachal is mikdashi. You shall not defile my holy service or my mikdash, my sanctuary. Shema avad, because if he performed, it's defiled. Others, let's say, well, okay, he's still a kohen. Remember, it's not that he's not a kohen. He can eat from the meat, right? What if he did the service that he's not supposed to do? Maybe it's still valid, right? It could be you're not allowed to do, but if you did it, it's still good. In other words, you did something wrong, but the service itself is okay. So Rashi says, no, this is what it means. Don't defile my holy service means that if you actually did it, it becomes defiled. The apostle becomes disqualified. In other words, it would have to still be done by someone else, right? Because it's not valid. 24, and Moshe told this to Aaron and his sons and all of the children of Israel. Interesting. Why all the children of Israel? Let's see Rashi. Moshe, this mitzvah he told over to his brother and to his nephews. Aaron, next Rashi. Why do you have to tell all Bnei Israel? Because to alert the court, to make the court responsible al Kohanim regarding the Kohanim and the commandments that they need to fulfill.
It means Kohanim have to answer to the court.
Which exactly. Kohanim have to answer to the court. Oh, still have a lot left. Okay, Emor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, David el Aaron, speak to Aaron, and to his sons, and separate themselves from Mikotche, Bnei Israel, that they should separate themselves from the holy offerings of the children of Israel, and they should not profane the name of my holiness, desecrate my holiness, I share, hey, Makdishim li ani Hashem, that they are offering, that they are sanctifying for me, I am Hashem. So what is this talking about? So Rashi, in verse 2, chapter 22, Nazir means that they should, a Nazir el Prisha means to separate, move themselves, remove themselves. Similarly, it says, Nazir me'acharai, to separate yourself before me. Nazir Achar, withdraw towards the rear. Means to separate yourself from that which is holy, be made to Muslim, speaking about in the days of their impurity. In other words, if they're impure, they need to separate themselves from engaging with anything that's holy. And they should withdraw from the holy, with that which is holy to the children of Israel, which they are consecrating to me. They shouldn't defile it. Hashem Kochi, my holy name. Invert the verse to explain it. That they are consecrating to me. This includes even the holy, which is the Kohanim themselves, which the Kohanim themselves have consecrated. Now, that which is consecrated by the children of Israel, and even that which they consecrate themselves. If they're impure, they should not involve themselves in this offering. Yes, Hashem Mikachim, Rabbis Mikachim Kohanim Atzmam. Okay. Verse 3. Emor Aleihim, say to them, for generations, throughout the generations, Kolish, every person, every man, Sheyikra, will bring near, will offer, Mikol Zarechem, Elakachim, who will offer their seed, meaning their offspring, to the holies, Asher Yakdishu B'nai Israel, that they will be sanctified by the Bnei Israel. In other words, it's being consecrated by the children of Israel, Hashem, to Masay Allah, right? And his impurities on him. In other words, speaking about the Kohen here, in the previous verse, it didn't say about impurity. Now it's explaining what Rashi explained before, that we're speaking about that a Kohen is impure. It's these words now that we just said, that to Masay Allah, and his impurity is upon him, upon the Kohen. And that Kohen, who will now bring an offering of that was consecrated by the children of Israel, they will be cut off from before me. I am God. Right? Ani Hashem. Meaning they will have premature death. Right? Something we've learned in the past. Rashi. Kolish Asher Yikrav. Ein kriva zu el achila. Is this Hamid, is that something I need to know? Hold on, just give me a quick second.
Quite a bit,
Quite a bit to go.
quite a bit to go. Oh my God, Rashi is so wrong.
The drawing here refers only to eating.
Sorry?
Certainly, we find that the prohibition of eating holy things in a state of impurity is expressed by the word negia. Siga. She must not eat anything holy, which is referring to a prohibition of eating. Our rabbis learned that this means you have a problem. This means that Zera.
Okay.
Zera.
Okay. Okay, so we're in Rashi, yeah? So Kol Ish Asher Yikrab. So any person, right, of your offspring who's going to come near, Ein krivazu ella achila. So Rashi says, interesting. You know, the word says coming near, but he says it means eating. How do we know that? Why does he say that? Right. Similarly, we find the negative commandment against eating that which is holy in a state of impurity. It says it says they're touching. It says we had that in Parshas Shmini, right? We had it a few parshas ago. It says about touching, when it meant eating. And anything that's holy, that's sacred, don't touch it. But there it's a negative commandment of one who eats, right? Anything in a state of impurity. How do they know? So now the sages, they derive the fact that the above verse is referring to eating rather than touching. They learn that from a Gzeir Shava by equating. In another place it says touch, and it says touch, and the other place where it's touch, it's clearly about eating. The it's impossible to say regarding our verse, that the person would be getting kares for just touching. Kares alachila, because kares is only stated in regard to eating something that is sacred in a state of impurity. Bitzav is arein in the Parshas Tzav. There it says that. Shtei krises, it mentions kares. Zu etzel zu, one next to the other. And if it would be that by touching, by merely touching, not eating, a sacrifice while you're in a state of impurity, it would not be necessary to make him subject to kares in a state to state his punishment explicitly al for eating. Because if touching, you are getting kares, right? Early death, premature death. So then eating all the more so. Because eating is more engaged with in a state of impurity. So therefore, it has to mean not to touch, it means to eat. So, in other words, if a kohen is impure and he touches, he doesn't get kares. He doesn't get premature death. If he eats that meat, though, then he does get premature death. Right? And that's why our verse can't be just about touching, because when it says coming close in what? Right? So Rashi said close means here to eat, which is unusual. But he proves it by the fact that touching doesn't get kares, so therefore coming close over here can't be touching, must be eating. So eating in the terms of coming near is expounded in Torah's Kahanim. And can there be one who touches that which is sacred in a state of impurity that they would get kares? Is that possible? The Midrash asks, if that would be so, that there would be that there's no kares for touching. Why does it vikrab that he came near? Once it has been rendered fit to be brought near, to be offered on the altar, one is not subject for kares on account of it, mishum tuma, because of the impurity, unless those things which permit it to be eaten have been brought near, offered up. Well, Im Taimar, and if you want to say, Shalish Krisis Evitumas Gotchim Lama, why is it 3 statements about the punishment of premature death with regard to the impurity of that which is holy? In other words, the prohibition against eating that which is holy while in a state of impurity. Why is it mentioned 3 times that you get kares? It's explained there in the Tractate of Shavuos. Achas leklal, one is for a broad statement, achas leprat kulu, and one is for a particular statement of particulars. Well, that was a bit of a difficult Rashi, I must tell you. The tumasai olav, and the impurity is upon him. Rashi, what does that mean? Tumasai adam olav, yacham basar medaber. One might think that the verse is speaking about the flesh of the offering and it means muscle Allah basar Allah, that the impurity of the flesh upon it, the flesh. And that the verse is speaking about someone who's pure and ate meat that's impure. Allah meaning it's on the flesh, not on the person, right? There's different possibilities. It could be that the meat is impure, or it could be the person's impure and the meat is pure. But we must say, from the implication we learn that the verse is speaking about the impurity can depart from him. There's Adam, that's a person. He has a way of becoming purified by immersion in the mikvah, as opposed to the meat doesn't have a way to become aha. The term v'tumasai olav in Hebrew means its impurity is upon it. Its impurity is upon it, but not it. Meaning it could be rectified, the impurity. It's like on you, but I can get it off me. If it's on me, I can get it off me. If it's of me, then I can't get it off me.
It is not impure, but the impurity is upon.
Upon. So who could that be? It can't be the meat, because once the meat is impure, there's no rectification for the meat. It has to be burnt, right? Outside of the encampment, right? So then who's the impurity about? The kohen, because he could become purified. He could go to the mikvah. It's just proving that it's not because the impurity is upon it. You might want to learn that it's speaking about the kohen is pure, but the meat is impure. So Rashi says it can't be that. Right? And then when the kohen ate that meat in a state of impurity, a state of purity, because he ate that meat, he becomes impure and he gets kares. It's only if he's in a state of impurity does he get kares.
You guess what?
Kares, premature death.
Oh.
And he will be cut off. One might think that he's cut off from this side and that side. That he's cut off from his place. And he should settle in another place. In other words, exile. He has to go into exile. He has to leave the sanctuary. Maybe he has to go somewhere, to exile. Talmud Loimar, the verse says, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem, which implies I'm everywhere. See, it's not like you can go somewhere.
No escape.
No escape. In other words, you're being cut off from Hashem. It means premature death again. Wow. Okay, I would love to continue. Oh my gosh. I realize it's, but we're going to have to go to Tanya. And there's too much there. I mean, not too much, but
Very long.
yeah. All right, folks.